I welcome all of you. I'm Dr. Ogbemudia, who will be the moderator of the seminar today. And on behalf of the Zeribe Nwosu Foundation, I welcome everyone to this seminar. Don't forget, this is one of the series of our seminar series that is inviting people to share their experiences. In our previous seminar for last month, we invited 2 people to share their experience on how they navigated to get an award for the UK Global Talent Visa. And today we've invited Ogbemudia to share with us about his own experiences on living and studying in Canada as an international student. We do know, especially for those of us who have been international students, we know it's never that easy. You know, the culture shock, changes in the educational experience, and a couple, including weather. So we'll hear from Ogbemudia from his own experience in our seminar today. So we welcome all of you and also welcome the speaker, and I look forward to listening to him. Just a couple of announcements to make. I know we've been receiving a couple of messages from those who applied for the Zeribe Nwosu Foundation scholarships. If you applied for any of them, please just be patient with us. We are just finalizing the shortlisting before sending out emails inviting people for interview. So we are still on track because the announcement of the awardees will be in 1st of August. So we are still on track. We'll be sending out emails to those who has been shortlisted for interview and also contacting those who were not able to make it through this time, and hopefully they can apply again if they are still eligible in the next year call. And before I hand over this to the speaker, just for those who are joining us for the first time today, just to let you know on how you can get across or reach out to Zeribe Nwosu Foundation in case you've got anything to ask us, or probably if you want to gain more information about the foundation and also all of those opportunities we share from time to time, you could also follow us on Facebook. You can join us on the Telegram, where we've got I think almost 2,000 members at the moment. You can also send us email using one of these email contacts that is on the screen. And also, we do share the recorded seminars in the Zeribe Nwosu Foundation YouTube channel. You could also go to that channel to see previous seminars and also subscribe so that you get notification whenever we post a new video. You can also visit the foundation website to get more information about the fantastic activities the foundation does and also the key mission and goals. So thank you for joining us once again this evening, and I do hope you enjoy the seminar just like I'm hoping to do. I'll hand over to the speaker, but before I do that, Dr. Zil have mentioned it could be more like an interactive session. So I don't want to put a lot of formalities of people not asking questions when the talk is going on. So we can navigate that, make it interactive so that everyone will get along at the same time. So thank you. The speaker, Ogbemudia, do we have you here so that I can stop sharing?
Okay. Yes, you do have me here.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you all, depending on where you are. My name is Ogbemudia Obariase, and let me just share my screen. Okay. Can you all see my screen? Hello? Can
Yes,
you all?
I can see that. Yes, I can see
Awesome,
that.
Yes.
awesome,
Yeah.
awesome.
If you can
Okay,
get into the presentation mode, that will be fine.
okay. I'm going to be sharing my experiences as a student here in Canada. And even before I arrived here in Canada, I'm going to also be sharing what steps I took before arriving here in Canada. So let me state for the record that I am a current student of Seneca Polytechnic. And also I'll be sharing some immigration tips which I use. However, I'm not an immigration agent and I'm not representing Seneca as far as this discussion is concerned. So let's proceed. So firstly, I'm going to give you a bit of background of my story. Like I said, my name is Ogbemudia and I am Nigerian. My story started sometime in 2020 when I made the decision that I was going to further my education and I chose Canada. When I decided on that, the first thing I started doing was searching for schools who were offering the programs that I was interested in. After deciding on the school that I was going to, I began searching for immigration agents because at the time I was of the opinion that this thing, which was quite technical, the immigration process, be left best to the experts. I was searching for immigration agents and I spoke to a couple of them. And the few who I spoke to gave me some very significant prices as their fees. And when I compared that to my tuition fee, it came up to a very significant amount. At the time, it was about 70 to 80% of my tuition fees. I decided that, okay, I think I should do this myself. I proceeded to, do some research, gather my documents, and it took me about 3 to 4 months to gather my documents and also do research. And then I put in my application sometime in November 2021. And then I got a feedback from IRCC in December 2022. So about over a year. And it was a result of the pandemic. The world was just coming out of the pandemic situation. And so IRCC had a lot of backlog. That was why there was delay in the processing time of my own application. However, currently I checked like 2 days back. It takes about 5 weeks if you are processing your own application from Nigeria. Processing time, obviously has improved. So I know a number of us are like aspiring to come to Canada to study. I've shared a screenshot of my application page on IRCC. If you look to your right, you're going to see a screenshot of that page. So the entire study permit application process is done on this page here. The entire process is done just on this page. And if by chance you are not familiar with what documents are being requested, all you need to do is just look at the third column there. If you look at the third column there, you're going to see instructions. And when you tap on the question mark, it's going to explain to you what exactly the documents the IRCC is requesting from you. And it's the same for every other section beneath. So as you can see, it's quite ordered. And if you just follow it step by step, it's pretty easy. And also here where you have the client information, that is where you're going to put your statement of purpose. Statement of purpose is a very important document when you are applying for your study permits. It's a very important document. I don't know how much I can emphasize this. The statement of purpose, that is where you are going to provide information to the IRCC officer stating basically who you are, what's your academic background, what you intend to study in Canada, why Canada and why not any other country, why are you deciding on Canada and not any other country? And also you are going to talk about, your ability to finance your stay in Canada. So you are going to provide all those information for them in your statement of purpose. And more importantly, everything you state in your statement of purpose, you must have corroborating documents which you are going to upload. As you can see on the fourth column there, you see upload file. That is where you are going to upload these documents. Every information you have in your statement of purpose, you must have corroborating documents because you must not leave any information to guesswork on the part of the immigration officer. Because where you give them any reason to doubt, that could be grounds for denying your application. So you must, put all the necessary information and be very truthful in every information you provide IRCC. For me, when I was putting my application, there were 3 major sources of information that I made use of when putting in my application. I relied on information I got from the Government of Canada website. Now, the Government of Canada website is the authoritative source for all immigration information as it relates to coming to Canada. I put the website URL there. You can just, copy it and check it out. Then also I made use of YouTube as a resource and I made use of school websites. YouTube is a treasure trove of information. It is a very great resource when you're trying to, put in your application. For me, I got step-by-step instructions on how to put in my application, as study permit application from YouTube. I was able to follow instructions step by step, step by step. And it took me a while. There were videos that I watched and rewatched and rewatched continuously until I finally put in my application. YouTube is a very useful resource for you to make use of. And also the school website. Go through the school website, know the program that you're going to be studying, and all those information. Those are the three resources I think will help you. So on to the next slide. Also, prior to coming here to Canada, one of the most important things I had to take into consideration was what program to study. Because when you're coming here to Canada, you have to take into consideration what occupations are in demand. What does the government of Canada actually want as it relates to labor shortages? Because there are quite a number of professions that are in high demand. Professions in areas of STEM, professions in areas of healthcare, professions in the areas of construction. Those areas are areas that the government are looking for people. So you have to take that into consideration when deciding on what program you are coming to study. Let's say, for example, you have a bachelor's in fine and applied arts from the University of Nsukka, and you are coming to Canada. You need to ask yourself, is fine and applied arts an occupation that is in demand in Canada? You have to ask yourself that question, because when you study programs that are in demand, then you have a greater chance of securing a job after you complete your program. And in addition, the result of the recent updates in their rules, as at November 2024, not every program is PGWP eligible. So by PGWP, I mean postgraduate work permits. What postgraduate work permit is basically an opportunity for you as a student to stay back and work in Canada after you have done your program. Now, the amount of years that you will be given as a PGWP for PGWP is also dependent on how much time you spend studying. If you spent like 1 year studying, you most likely will be eligible for a 1-year PGWP. But if you spent like 2 years and above, you'll be eligible for about 3 years PGWP. So you also need to take that into consideration when you are choosing your program. Because if you choose a program which is not PGWP eligible, by the time you are done with your program, no PGWP for you. Now, I have also included some links here. If you look at it below, PGW eligible program CIP codes. Now, if you copy that URL there and paste it on your browser, you are going to see some programs which are like PGWP eligible programs. All you need to do is just go down, search for your own program there. You can see there's going to be like a CIP code. You can copy that code and go to the next website, which is CIP code checker. You put that URL there, the code that you obtain from the first website, put it in the next website, and it will tell you for sure that, okay, your program is PGWP eligible. So it's important for you to take this into consideration because it will save you costs and it will save you time. I will give you an example of a friend I met in school a couple of weeks back. She had finished a 2-year program in Sentinel College, and she was coming to Seneca College to, do nursing program. Now, if she had taken in-demand occupations into consideration before she started her first program, she would have just finished the nursing program right off the bat and, move on to, the job market. But now she has done 2 years program. She's coming to do another 2-year program. And that is very expensive because tuition fees here in Canada is expensive. Okay, let's proceed to the pros and cons of studying here in Canada. So in Canada, when you study in Canada, you are basically studying in institutions that provide you with world-class education. And it's not just about the degrees and the paper degrees they provide to you, at the end of your program. It's also the practical skills that you are provided in the course of your program. In the course of your program, you could be doing a program that has, a co-op placement You could be doing a program that has internship. For example, you are doing tech or you are doing other sciences or STEM programs. You basically would be having labs, what we call labs. So you'll be having practical, labs where you get to acquire some hands-on skills, which would be valuable to you in the job market. So they don't just provide you with the education, they provide you with the requisite skills to make you competitive in the job market. That's one advantage of, studying here in Canada. Then also, Canada is like a multicultural environment. Multicultural in the sense that every race that you can think of on this planet, they are represented here in Canada. Canada is like a melting pot for all races. So if you come here, you are going to have the opportunity to interact with people from different climes. And you see, education is not just what you get within the four walls of a classroom. These interactions you have with people from other parts of the world, can help also, help educate you as well. Another advantage of, studying here in Canada is that, you get, the postgraduate work permit. You have an opportunity to work, after your program. And that also is an advantage if you are considering, putting in an application for PR. If you are putting in an application for PR, you have already studied in Canada, then you also have some work experience in Canada. That will earn you some points when you are, putting in an application for PR. So those are some of the advantages of, studying here in Canada. But with every advantage, there are some disadvantages. So we will talk also about the cons, which are the downsides of, studying here in Canada. So one of the most significant challenges, studying here in Canada is the fact that the tuition fees is high. And I kid you not, tuition fees for international students in Canada is significant. I'm going to give you practical example. In the course which I am currently studying, if you are coming in to study the course which I'm currently studying, which is computer systems technician, the cost for a domestic student or someone who has a permanent residence is about 2,500 Canadian dollars. However, as an international student, I pay $9,500 per semester. So that is almost about times 3 of what a local student is paying. So the cost is significant. If you are a nurse in the same school, you'll be paying like 5,000 as a local student, but you'll be paying about 12,000 as an international student. So the cost is significant. So when you're coming here, always ensure that you are coming in for the right program so you don't have to duplicate paying tuition fees in one college and coming to another college to also pay tuition fees. So get it right the first time. Then also living costs. Living cost is, is significant, but the amount your living cost is also dependent on your location as far as Canada is concerned. Now, if you are living in the bigger cities like Vancouver or Toronto, your living cost will be, much more than somebody who finds himself in, let's say, New Brunswick, Halifax, or let's say Calgary. So the location where you are located also influences your living costs. Then also there is a challenge of, the weather condition. We have harsh winters here in this part of the world. Now, Toronto is one part of Canada that has one of the best weathers. You don't have as severe winters as other parts of Canada. But this year's winter was quite severe. At least I came sometime in 2023. But this last winter, it was quite severe. And one thing you have to understand about the winter season is that apart from the biting cold, which could go as low as minus 25, as I have experienced, sometimes it could even come with, depression. I never understood how the sun would affect my mood until I came to this country. Not seeing the sun can affect your mood, you understand? And it can lead you to depression. I am, that's something that I personally, experienced. When you just keep seeing just gray skies, no sun, no vitamin D, So that is also something you need to take into consideration. And when you're coming, always try to, connect with, Nigerian community, try to connect with friends. So when you find yourself in, situations where maybe your mental health is being challenged, reach out to people, talk to people. It helps a lot. And also keep yourself active. That helps a lot. Finally, the limited work hours is also a challenge, because as a student, you are only allowed to work 20 hours per week. And 20 hours per week, if you are working on, say, on a minimum wage pay, the most that you'll be able to do with that money is maybe pay your rent and maybe have a few dollars left for food. But you are not going to be able to, pay your tuition fee from working here, from working, student hours. So if you are of the opinion that, okay, let me just come to Canada, when I get here, I will figure it out. No, don't try that. Cross all your T's and dot all your I's back home before you get here. You understand? Have your plan, have a proper plan, proper financial plan before you come here. Because if you want to depend on student hours to pay your tuition or pay more significant costs, it's basically not going to work. So have your plan ready before you come here. Then life in Canada. So under this, I'm going to be talking about finances, accommodation, transportation. Oh, sorry about that. Sorry, my system is a bit finicky. So now for the finances, the Canadian government has stipulated that if you are coming here to study, you should have a minimum of about 22,000 Canadian dollars for living expenses. That is aside your tuition. That is also aside your traveling expenses. You need to have that as a minimum when you are coming in here. Then for the accommodation prices ranges between, let's say, for a student's accommodation ranges between, let's say, 800 and like 1,500, depending on the type of accommodation and also the location of the accommodation. Now, if, for example, you are paying like 800 to like 1,100, most likely you would be in shared apartments, a shared apartment where you have like 2 or 3 people, and you are paying your rent maybe separately, or maybe you come together and you look for a place to rent. But if you are paying like between 1,300 to 1,500, maybe you can get like an en-suite room, but maybe you will still share kitchen. Now, these prices I'm giving you is basically for Toronto. But if you find yourself in other cities, there's a chance that you may be paying less. That's except in Vancouver. Because I have a friend who stays in Calgary before he moved to his own house. He was in a 2-bedroom basement quarters and he was paying 1,400. And I also have another friend who is in New Brunswick and is paying 1,200 for a 1-bedroom condo. And there's also a couple of friends I also have in Halifax. They are about 3, and they rented out a 3-bedroom apartment for 2,500. But I am here in Toronto. I'm in a shared apartment, 3 of us in the apartment, and it's just a flex room, and I'm paying 1,100. So as you can see, where you find yourself, the location that you are would influence how much you pay as far as accommodation is concerned. So you need to take that into serious consideration before, choosing what province you want to, move to. So you have to take that into serious consideration. Then for food, not too bad. But if you are coming here on a budget, you have to understand that it's better for you to cook for yourself rather than buying food or ordering food on Uber Eats. It's very expensive to order food. For example, a couple of weeks or months ago, I ordered some food from Uber, and I'm going to share with you the costs. Now, the total cost was $37, while the actual cost of the food was just $23. The rest, $14 thereabouts, went for delivery fees and taxes, $14. So the food cost just $22, but I had to pay $37.25. So it is a no-brainer. That $14, I could have used it to buy some groceries. Rather than paying such premium amounts to eat out, it is better for you to go to grocery shops and buy your food stuff and cook for yourself. About grocery shops, it's also important to know that when you come to Canada, it's not all grocery shops that you just come in and buy things from, especially when you're on a budget. There are grocery shops that are much more cheaper to buy food from than others. For example, if you're a student, one of your favorites should be Dollarama, Freshco, Dollarama, Freshco, and there's another one. When I remember, I will let you know. But you have to be strategic about which stores you go to buy your food. Very important. Then for transportation, using as a case study, if you're in Toronto, the best thing for you to do is to have what you call a Presto card. If you have a Presto card, then you can load your Presto card, and with your Presto card, you can go to any part of the city at any time. But the plans that you have on your Presto card is also important. If you are a student, it's best to get on the student plan. Adult plan is about $156. But if you are a student, basically you need to get your post-secondary school ID. And with that, you can be able to cut down your Presto fee from $156 to $128. Also, there are some schools that have like agreements with these transport corporations to reduce the fees for their students. So if you have schools that have such an agreement with transport companies, then you should take that advantage so that you pay lower fees for, your transportation. This basically brings me to the end of the presentation. I have tried my best to summarize, but we'll move on to the question and answer segments, because I know a couple of people here could be aspiring to come to Canada, and maybe there is one or two questions you think I did not touch on, but you need a response to. So you can just ask me the questions and I will do my best to provide you with answers.
Okay, thank you so much for the presentation. It's really very informative, Ogbemudia. I do really appreciate it, and I also have learned a lot because experience, they do say, is always the best teacher. Especially where you mentioned if you haven't planned your finances very well, then the person could be in trouble because outside they could tell you, oh, you just arrive, you will always get a job to pay your fees and pay your rents and all of that, you know. But from experience, like you mentioned, is always the best teacher. Okay, thank you for that. Dr. Zeribe, do you want to make a comment before we open the floor for questions and answers?
Yes, I just want to say thank you to the speaker for a very detailed and I would say very calm presentation. I actually like the way you delivered your points and I think it hit home in many respects, especially when you mentioned that, you don't just start going to buy things from every shop. I think that a lot of people don't consider that. I personally don't or never did. And in hindsight, I realized that there are shops that when I went to buy things, it's almost always on the high side. Sometimes you come back, you just bought three things, bread and maybe biscuit, and you already spent $22 or so. You're wondering why that is the case. I think it is important for people to be aware of these sort of variables and use that to plan their travels, especially when they're on budget, as you rightly mentioned. So I really want to thank you for your very insightful presentation, and I look forward to the question and answer sessions.